Prong collars are very powerful tools, and using one could benefit you and your dog. Before I get into this topic, let me address the elephant in the room. These are powerful tools. If you are new to dog training, new to using a leash and a collar, then I cannot recommend this tool for you and your dog. However, that doesn't mean that you should avoid learning about this tool. It's my hope that by sharing with you what I know about prong collars and how to effectively and humanely use them, that you will have even more opportunities to reinforce your dog while also having a tool that can interrupt unwanted behaviors and lead your dog with precision. So with that out of the way, here are the topics I'm going to cover in this video. The differences among high quality, good quality, and low quality collars. The differences in the size of prong collars and how that can affect your dog. How to size your prong collar and make adjustments to get the best fit. Should you use a collar with a quick release versus ones without? Connecting your leash to your prong collar. And finally, introducing your dog to a prong collar. Okay, so in this section, I'm going to be showing you the differences among high quality, good quality, and poor quality collars. I'd like to start this by examining the tips of one bad quality, one average quality, and one good quality. So let's start with the bad quality tip first. Okay, so take a look at that tip right there. That tip right there has an edge, and this is a very poor quality collar. Now, you may not know the difference. I know many years ago when I first started training with prong collars, I didn't know that there was a difference, and the very first prong collar that I ever put on my dog had this kind of tip on there. The thing that's so bad about it, okay, is that not that it's pointed or anything, but really the thing that's bad about it is that there's an edge right here. So that's going to be on your dog's neck, and as you're using it, it is going to be scraping their neck, okay? Now, a dog's neck is pretty tough, but you're going to see a considerable difference when you go to a good or even high quality prong collar. Okay, so let's take a look at a good quality one. Okay, so this is a good quality one. If you look at the way that they've machined the tip, it's rounded, okay? That is a much better option for your dog when you're choosing a prong collar. The rounded tips, okay, are meant to mimic the mouth of another dog, but they're not supposed to be super, super sharp, and they're not supposed to cut your dog. So if you've got a prong collar that you've already purchased, I would advise you to go take a look at it and see if you have the flat, sharp tip, or maybe even a pointed tip, which I've seen those out there, or if you got something more like this, which is a rounded tip. So this is just a regular prong collar. It's off of a regular prong collar that isn't necessarily the highest quality. Now I'm going to show you the high quality tip now. Okay, so right there, that's a high quality tip. And what I'm going to tell you, I can't really tell the difference between that tip and the tip of the regular quality collar, okay? So this is actually out of a box of a Herm Sprenger prong collar where they sell the extra lengths, but you can see that that's machined and rounded. It doesn't have an edge right there. So that is a much, much better, much higher quality tip than what you saw in the first one. So let's take a look at that bad one again. So like that bad one, you can see how it's even machinely, like right there, you can see that there's a little problem in the way that they just cut it, and really has an edge right there that can cut your dog. And then now if we bring back this good quality one, okay, it's kind of hard to see in the camera, but one is rounded and one, yeah, I think I can see it there. One is rounded and the other one is flat and sharp. So I cannot recommend that. This particular one came, I ordered it on Amazon as, and it was actually for the high quality collar, which is a Herm Sprenger. So like I said, I ordered this one on Amazon, and here's the collar that it actually came off of. And what I want to show you is right here, you see the branding that says Herm Sprenger Germany. This is a knockoff collar. It is not actually a Herm Sprenger. All these tips on here, as you look at them, they all have that sharp edge to them, okay? Now, I had one that that I bought a while back, and I just threw it away because I was just so disgusted by it. All the tips on the prongs were pointed and sharp. Please, 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 if you have one of those, throw it away, and also report that seller if you ended up getting it somewhere online. But this collar right here, if you didn't know anything about prong collars and you saw, oh, look, it's a Hermspringer prong collar, this is a knockoff. It is not an actual Hermspringer collar. Okay, so now I actually have a Hermspringer collar over in my right hand. So if you look, you can see the branding there. You can see their attempt to do it, but you can just feel the difference between these two collars and the weight. The German steel feels a lot different than whatever type of metal that this might be. Maybe it's steel, I'm not really sure, but there's a difference there. But again, as you begin to inspect even more closely, you're gonna see that all these tips have been machine rounded, okay? Where you're also gonna see on this Hermspring, on this knockoff, that they're all flat and sharp. One other thing to note right here is as you take a look at these two collars, this is the actual Hermspringer high quality prong collar. This is the cheap knockoff. You're gonna have this plate right here. This plate right here comes on all the Hermspringer collars, okay? And on this knockoff right here, you don't have that. That plate is actually gone. So that's one of the telltale signs that, hey, this is an imitation and knockoff, and this is actually the real deal right here. So that's the first thing that I want you to know, is that there is a difference in prong collars. I can't ever suggest or recommend using something like this. If you have a collar like this one, please just throw it away or melt it down or do something where it's never going to get put on any dog. Okay, so in this part, I'm going to be showing you the differences between these three prong collars, and you have three different sizes. Okay, you're going to have the small, you have the medium, and you have the large. Now, one thing that I've been talking about for some time now is whenever you look at the prong collars, you're most likely going to be marketed to in a way on these prong collars where the small is for small dogs, the medium is for medium dogs, and then the large is going to be for large dogs, okay? That's not actually how I use it, but there is some truth to that. You can't, it's very difficult with a small dog to put on the large and maybe even sometimes the medium prong collar just because they just simply do not fit, okay? Now, when I use these prong collars and I'm going to put one on a dog, I'm trying to measure how much the dog is pulling and how sensitive the dog is, how stimulated they get to make the right choice for which collar I'm actually going to put on the dog. Okay, so this particular collar right here is the 12-inch, and it is the 2¼ millimeter tip, okay? So I like using this particular collar for dogs that pull very firmly, and maybe the owners are having a really difficult time. You do need to take extra care with this one because out of all the prong collars, the small is the most powerful one, so you do need to be able to use it in a way where you're not putting too much pressure on the dog. So it is a finesse tool. It is not necessarily a blunt instrument, so having really good leash handling skills is going to be important when you're using this type of collar. But you'll see here that all the tips, again, on this one, this is the Hermspringer, that all the tips right here, they're going to be rounded, and that's one thing you're looking. So this tip is generally, again, for small dogs and for those dogs that are pulling very, very hard. This does a nice job of helping you get the pulling behavior to stop. It doesn't do anything to reinforce them for actually walking together with you. That's where you're going to use your food, your petting, your praise, and your play. But this does do a very good job for a lot of dogs, getting them to stop, so that way you get the opportunity to actually reinforce the dog. Again, this is the 2¼ millimeter tip, okay, and it is generally for a 12 to 14-inch neck. You can make it go bigger for larger breeds or dogs with bigger diameter necks by simply adding in links. Okay, so here in my hand now is the collar for the 16 to 18-inch neck, and it is a 3 millimeter tip. So it is bigger than the 2¼ millimeter tip, So if I have a choice on which prong collar that I want to use on a dog, I generally go with this one because it is not as firm as the 2 1/4 millimeter tip. It tends to be softer, but it does get pretty good results with a whole bunch of dogs, okay? Again, this is made by Hermspringer, so it is a high quality prong collar. Again, it's the one that has the rounded machined tips. It doesn't have those flat sharp ones. Again, I just can't repeat it enough that you should not be using one with sharpened or flat tips. They should be rounded tips. So this will be used on a dog that does pull firmly, but maybe not as firmly. You can size it down to fit it on smaller breeds, but the problem is that as you begin to remove prongs from this one, it's just going to be difficult to be able to get enough contact points so that way it can help the dog understand not to pull on the leash. Okay, so right here, this is now the 4 millimeter tip, and it is the biggest prong collar that I have. I don't believe that there actually are any bigger ones. There may very well be, but this is the biggest one that I've seen. I actually don't use this collar because it tends to be a little too vague, but that doesn't mean it doesn't come without its utility. I think it can be useful in certain applications. I just don't use this one. Again, this is a Hermspringer, and you can see here that these tips are very, very rounded, okay, really big and broad tips. So that's going to be the softest prong collar when you compare it to the 3 millimeter and the 2 1/4 millimeter collars I've just shown you. So again, Hermspringer prong collar, really soft collar, can obviously be used on large and giant breed dogs, but I do think that as far as like the stopping power that it has to get a dog to stop pulling, that it is not so effective. However, you can use this to be able to guide a dog and to steer them and to move them without the concern of it being a little too sharp. So this is not a bad option, but again, I guess it's worth mentioning that I don't use this particular one when I'm working with any dogs. Okay, so now onto how to size your prong collar. So I want to show you first how to actually remove links out of the prong collar, because this can be a very tricky thing for some folks. Okay, so right here, this is the 16 to 18 inch, and I've got the 3 millimeter prong collar here in my hands. Okay, so to take the prongs apart, what you need to do is you need to separate one prong from the other. The way that I do that is I'm going to push one up and I'm going to push one down. As I do that, you're going to see that it's going to slide out like that. Let me see if I can do that again. Well, while I'm at it, why don't I just put it together? When I put it together, I'll put the tip of one in, and then I'm going to squeeze, and then as I squeeze, I'm going to slide the other tip in there, and it's going to seat in there. All right, so to take it apart, I'm going to push one up, and I'm going to push one down. So right there, it's right at the verge. If I just keep pushing, it'll come apart. And then to put it back together, again, I'm going to put the tip of one. Don't seat it too far, because if you do that, you're not going to be able to get it in there. Barely put the tip and then squeeze it down, and then it's going to slide into place. So with these high quality prong collars, the Hermspringer mainly that has this back plate, what you want to do is you want to have an equal number of prongs on both sides of that hinge. Okay, so you can see there that there's an equal number of prongs. So if I was going to size it down for a dog, then I would begin to remove one prong at a time from either side. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that now. Okay, so now I've brought the size down, and you can see here that it's even. I've got the hinge right here, and then you see that it's even on either side. Okay, so that's actually a good fit. Now I'm going to make a bad fit. Okay, so let's take a look at this, okay? I've got this hinge back here And you can see that I've got extra prongs over on this side that are not matched up on the opposite side. I wouldn't want to use the collar this way because you want to distribute the pressure evenly in a flat way, where this is actually just going to be very uneven and it's not going to give the best information possible to your dog. So what you want to do is you want to try to have it as balanced as you possibly can. Okay, I'm going to show you just one other thing real quick. I do feel that this is an acceptable way to have the collar. What you see here is I have just one extra on the top row versus on the bottom, and I think it's okay to use it like that, where it's not perfectly balanced but it's close. But I just don't want to have more than one on one side where it really has it unbalanced, where you're going to see something more like this versus this. But what I do want to have is where it's perfectly balanced. Okay, let's go ahead and balance this collar again. Okay, and there it is, perfectly balanced. We've got an even number of prongs on either side. Okay, so next up, I just want to talk about, should you use a collar with a quick release, or should you use the collar that just has the chain? Now, I, for many, many years, have only used the one with the chain, and it's worked out really very, very well for me. But lately, I found myself in more opportunities where I'm going to be using the one with the quick release. Now, personally, I'm not going to use the one with the quick release, but I have seen the utility for some folks where this one is actually going to be a better fit for them and their dog too. Okay, so let me explain the key differences. On this particular one, okay, with the quick release, it makes it very, very easy to put on the dog. And the reason for that is when you squeeze these scissors, you're going to see that it just comes apart very, very easily. Then you can take the collar, in your hands, thread this little piece through, put it, and then it's on your dog. Then you're going to come and take the scissors and you're going to put that together. And so that's much, much easier for some folks to be able to put on their dogs. On the other model, you're not going to be able to do that. The way that you're going to put it on the dog is by taking the prongs apart and then putting it on, you're going to put it on around your dog's neck, and then you're going to come and you're going to put that together. Now, I'll tell you this is the small prong collar, the 2¼ millimeter. It's by far the easiest one to take apart and to put together. If you're dealing with any of the other prongs, the 3 millimeter or the 4 millimeter, those are more difficult to actually put together. And if you don't have the best hand strength, then the quick release may actually be a better option for you, because just undoing the scissor is really very, very easy, okay, as opposed to actually taking apart and putting it together each and every time. Now, let me show you this. Okay, so this is the 3 millimeter. So on the 3 millimeter, to take it apart, it's the same thing as the 2¼ millimeter, but it's heavier steel, so it's going to take more hand strength to be able to take that apart. And then it's going to take more hand strength to put that together. So if you have the scissors, you just take the scissor, you squeeze it, it undoes it, and then it's very easy to take it apart. Then what you can do, like I showed you previously, is you're just going to take this, go through right there, and then you're going to put that scissor together. But now I'm going to show you something, and this is one of the reasons why I do not use this collar. So if you decide to use this collar, just keep this in mind. So now you're going to see how the scissor actually fits inside that ring. You may think that's not a big deal, but let me show you what happens. If I put pressure and I pull straight down, look what's going to happen. So again, if you take the collar and you have it like this, and then you somehow get this scissor into the ring right there. See how that fits in there? If you do that, and then somehow it pulls, look what happened right there. The collar came apart. And that happens to folks. The collar will come apart on you, and your dog is loose, and it never happens at the best time. So I really warn folks that have the 3mm and the 4mm prong collars where they have the scissors that this can actually happen to you. And it's not a good thing to have your dog loose. Now, you'll notice that I said on the 3mm and the 4mm. Here is the 2¼ mm. And as we look at it, you're gonna see that I'm gonna try to put the scissors into there, and they just don't fit. So they actually fixed the design flaw on these particular ones where the scissors will not go in there and it can't unexpectedly come apart on you. So I really like that. I hope that sometime soon that they'll, on the 3mm and the 4mm, that they'll just make this hole right here much smaller, and if they make that smaller, so that way they can block the scissors from actually going in there. So I don't actually like using those other ones because they can come apart. If you do end up using the 4mm with the scissors, my recommendation is to back up your collar, or back up your collar to a secondary leash, so that way, you want to back up your leash to a secondary collar, so that way if this does happen to fail, that you still have physical control of your dog if the prong collar actually comes apart. Okay, so here in front of me, I have the 3mm Herm Sprenger prong collar with the quick release. What I want you to take note of is the rings that are on the chain portion of the prong collar. This ring right here, this is called the D ring because it kind of resembles a D. And then this ring right here, this is called the O ring because, well, it really does actually look like an O. So your leash can actually get attached to this. Now, the first place that you should attach your leash is to the D ring. When you put your leash onto the D ring, you're going to see that it actually has swiveling action, so that way it's very easy for your leash not to get tangled up. Now, if you do end up attaching your leash to the D ring, that actually makes the collar the most powerful that it can be. You can also double up your collar where you take the leash clasp and you put it on the D ring and the O ring together. That's actually going to set it up to where it's going to be its softer orientation. So again, if your leash is only connected to the D ring, that's going to be the firmer orientation, and then if it's going to be on the D ring and the O ring, that's going to be the softer orientation. Okay, so let me show you the difference. So when you're going to use this, if you put your leash here on the D ring, that's going to make the collar the most powerful that it can be. If you take your leash and you put it on both rings, then that's going to make it a little bit flatter. Okay, so let me kind of show you the difference. So now the collar is on my arm. I've got the leash here. When I pull up, you're going to see the nipping action. You can see how the sides are grabbing. Okay, so that right there is actually like the mouth of another dog biting down like that. The difference when you have a dog is the dog's mouth will actually close completely like this if they want to bite like that. That's called a scissor bite. But on a prong collar or pinch collar, it can't actually close all the way down. It's always going to have a little bit of slack in there. So that's one of the benefits, that you can't actually injure the dog by closing it all the way because it's designed to only partially close. The other thing that you can do is you can take your leash and not only attach it to the D ring, but you also attach your leash. When you put it on the O ring, instead of it nipping, it's now going to nudge. There's not this clamping action. There's now going to be a mouthing action that's going to press against the dog. So you can see there it doesn't actually completely close. It just is going to nudge up. My recommendation is that whenever you're first starting your dog, if you're new to prong collar training, that you would first attach your leash to both the D and the O ring. And if that doesn't seem to get the point across to getting your dog to stop pulling, then the D ring might be a better option, okay? Again, this is the 2¼ mm. This is the most powerful, so you want to be very careful with it. And what I mean by that is I don't necessarily want you to go any longer on your leash than this 5-foot leash right here, okay? I definitely wouldn't recommend for a novice to ever put a 10-foot, 15-foot, or even like a 33-foot long leash on a prong collar like this because that is dangerous, so you should avoid doing that. But a 4 foot, a 5 foot leash, that's gonna be fine because you see that it's always going to retain slack even when it's the firmest. And then again, just to reiterate it one more time, if you're gonna put this on your dog, make sure that you're putting it on both rings to see if that's gonna give you the effect that you want. Okay, so in this last section, I just want to show you how to put your prong collar on. Let me show you how not to put it on. You should never take a prong collar and put it on over the top of your dog's head the way that I just did. Do not put your prong collar on like this. So the way that you're going to want to put your prong collar on is by measuring it and making sure that it's fitted properly. So what I do is I first take it apart. When I take it apart, I'm going to take it and put it around my dog's neck, and then I want to see how many extra links I have. So here, it looks like I've got an extra 2 links that I need to remove. So now I'm going to remove the links, but if you remember what I showed you earlier, you want to keep your collar balanced. So I'm going to take one off there, and then I'm going to take another one off on this side. Now that I've taken them off both sides, you can still see that the collar is balanced, and now it's time to put it on my dog. If you have a prong collar that doesn't have the quick snap, then you're going to come down here, take it apart, put it around your dog's neck, and then secure that. And it should be this kind of fit. It shouldn't be very loose. It should just be gently laying over the top of your dog's neck. Good girl, Gabby. Now, if you've already sized your collar and you have the quick snap, so you're gonna undo it like this, then you're gonna take it apart. You'll take it apart, put it on around the dog's neck, and then you're gonna take the chain portion that I have here in my hand, thread it through, then you're gonna take the scissors and you're gonna connect it. Good girl, good dog. Introducing your dog to a prong collar is an important first step to having it become very useful, and also to prevent misusing it and creating confusion. It's my opinion that you should not use a prong collar to introduce your dog to a new skill. Rather, you should take a skill that your dog already knows and then add in the pressure from the prong collar to help improve the skill. Let me help give you an example. If you've been following me for some time, you know that I use place training to help dogs learn how to be calm in the presence of their owners. When I teach this skill to a dog and my clients, I generally want to make these 3 statements to the dog. Number 1, getting on the place bed is good. Number 2, laying down on the bed is the best. Number 3, coming off the bed without permission causes leash pressure and the loss of any reward. So in addition to making these statements, you would also want to communicate to your dog that when you feel the gentle guiding pressure, you should place yourself on the bed. Once you've done that, all gentle guiding pressure will be removed and you will receive a reward. Acting this out is how I feel that you should introduce a dog to prong collar pressure. The goal here is to help clarify for your dog that when they feel the guidance from the collar, they should perform the behavior. When your dog performs the behavior, the leash guidance should immediately go away, and then your dog should subsequently receive a very meaningful reward. Okay, so we have made it to the end. It was my intention to help you learn more about this powerful and useful tool. I hope that I've done so. If you have questions about how to use a prong collar in your training program, I'd first recommend enrolling your dog in a training program where you will be coached by an experienced professional. If for whatever reason that's not possible, please feel free to reach out to me. You can text me at 832-734-5189. All right, well, thanks again for watching this video. I'll be back soon. Happy training.
Go to bed. Good. House. Go to your bed. Lay down. Good dog. Free. Go to your bed. Good dog. Okay. Good girl. Good girl. Gabby. Go to bed. House. Good luck. Sit.